Today we're going to talk about the key components for nonprofits to thrive in the new normal. We'll talk about real-time audience insights that give you actionable data on COVID-19 impact and the economic factors in specific geographies and how that data informs your audience strategy. We'll talk about how that data and audience strategy then needs to inform relevant messaging and dynamically delivered creative. We also want to talk about taking this opportunity to create new engagement and loyalty platforms and also a reimagining of your virtual event strategy. But before we get into those pillars of your new normal strategy, I'd like to start out with just a little bit of context for the situation that we all unfortunately find ourselves in here. The first, and I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anybody, but we are in a recession. We know that 2019 was a banner year for individual giving, 4.7% year-over-year growth in 2018. But we also know that number is going to take a dive. In fact, the numbers from Q1 that have recently come in have already indicated that they are, and we are all feeling that impact. You know, when we look back at the onset of the Great Recession over a decade ago, there are some data points that can inform our expectations for what we're in for here. The Great Recession reduced total giving by about 7% in 2008, another 6.2% in 2009, and it took until 2014 for total charitable giving to surpass pre-recession levels. So there is a good chance that we are in this for the long haul. We're also seeing a resurgence of the virus over the past several weeks, particularly in the South and the West. Some states are continuing with the reopening plans while others are delaying them. And just yesterday, the U.S. set a record for daily new cases at almost 37,000. So this is a highly volatile situation with very different impacts on individuals, donors, and prospects, depending really on where they live in the country. And everyone on this webinar has a deep understanding of the impact of this crisis on nonprofits. 90% of organizations are negatively impacted. Nearly 7 in 10 nonprofits report that they are struggling to cover salaries, which is why we are seeing more and more staff reductions and furloughs within even the largest charities in the country. So there's some really devastating and difficult decisions that nonprofits are having to make based on the impact of this virus. But despite those doom and gloom indicators I just pointed out, interestingly enough, consumer sentiment is actually improving. Over the past month, we're seeing an uptick in consumers' comfort going out in public. And donors, at least at a mass market individual level, are showcasing their generosity. I know just about all of you participated in Givingtuesday now. There were individuals from over 145 countries that participated in the event. We're hearing and seeing and realizing great success with our clients from Givingtuesday now, and that all happened with a much shorter planning period than we normally have, of course. And while giving was down 6% overall in the first quarter, driven by declines in the mid-level and major donor cohorts, we actually saw small dollar giving having a significant year-over-year increases in gifts under $250 at almost 6%. We know that the United Way, for example, has raised over $900 million worldwide since mid-March. And so when we think about the new normal moving forward in this context, we think of the kind of 3 critical components and factors that are driving kind of our strategies for that, how to thrive in the new normal. The first is that digital adoption, which has been accelerating for years, really has taken a quantum leap over the past quarter. Many of you may have seen this McKinsey & Company report that recently came out saying that we vaulted 5 years forward in consumer and business digital adoption in a matter of around 8 weeks. The second pillar is, and factor that we're really taking into consideration here, is that consumers are thinking locally. This is a National Retail Federation poll from April that found that nearly half of consumers made a purchase specifically to support a local small business during the pandemic, and more than a third have donated or made a purchase to support individuals in their community who are furloughed or out of a job. According to Candid, almost 600 state and local community-focused COVID-19 funds have cropped up around the United States, attracting contributions from individuals, private foundations, and corporations alike. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement and the fight for racial equality in this country is another factor leading to individuals to look at their local communities and how they can affect change at their local level. You know, and the other factor here is that events really do need to be reimagined. We're hearing anecdotally from our clients that virtual events are producing 50 to 60% less revenue than what live events have produced in the past. And I really love this quote from Robin Cabral that appeared in Nonprofit Pro recently. There has been a movement to pivot during these times to ensure that the endless routine of special events continues in virtual format. However, many virtual formats are falling flat and appear somewhat out of tune with these unprecedented times. With people locked in their homes, with their mental health declining, the last thing on one's mind is grabbing a glass of wine and sitting in on a virtual gala. So the question becomes less about defaulting to what we know, how do we turn our gala or our walk event into a virtual version of that, but rather a rethinking of the desired outcomes of those events that they have historically produced and reimagining the right virtual engagement model to produce those outcomes.